Mark was an ordinary man struggling with troubles. He lived a life of his own in a small town. His world consisted of a shop that opened early in the morning and closed late at night. The days passed in a similar fashion in his shop, with high bills and dwindling customer traffic. Welcome to Emotion Line's channel. Our story with a surprise ending is going to get very interesting. Please don't forget to subscribe and like. One cold and gray afternoon on his way home from work, he noticed an abandoned car on the side of the road. Its headlights were dimly lit, and the old man next to it was trying to do something under the hood. The man was wearing a worn coat and his head was covered with white hair that bore the marks of years. The lines on his face were not only the marks of old age, but also of the hardships that life had thrown at him. Mark immediately pulled over on that familiar impulse. "Do you need help?" he asked, rolling down his window. The man smiled helplessly and nodded. He said his name was Morris, his car hadn't started for hours and he couldn't get help from anyone. Mark noticed that the old man's hands were shaking from the cold. Apparently, Morris had somewhere to be. After a short silence, he added, "I was on my way to visit family I haven't seen for years, but I guess I'm stuck here." Mark hesitated for a moment, but he knew he couldn't leave without helping. He wasn't a mechanic, but he knew a little about cars. "Let's have a look," he said. Warming his hands, he opened the hood of the car and began to examine it carefully. After a while, he identified the problem and managed to get the engine running again. The look of gratitude in Morris' eyes touched Mark deeply. The old man thanked him repeatedly and said he would never forget the debt he owed Mark. Mark just smiled and waved Morris goodbye. This small act of kindness seemed like an ordinary event in an ordinary day. But what Mark didn't know was that this simple act would change his life forever. The next morning, a mysterious gift appeared on his porch, signaling a completely new turn in his destiny. Mark woke up early that morning as usual. His morning routine consisted of brewing his coffee and getting ready to open his small shop. But as he stepped onto his porch, his eyes fell on a large envelope. The envelope was carefully placed and labeled Mark. The handwriting looked like it was written by an old man. He opened the envelope and out came some money and a note. Mark started to read the note before he saw how much the money was. "Mark, I can't repay you, but I wanted to say thank you. That day you fixed my car, you didn't just give me a helping hand. You gave me hope. You allowed me to visit family I hadn't seen in years, and that meant more to me than anything else. This small gesture is to show my gratitude to you. I hope I can be of some use to your work. Thank you, Morris." Mark paused for a moment as he read the note. The sincerity and weight of the writing had touched his heart. But when he looked at the money, he took a step back. The amount in the envelope was the equivalent of a month's income from his own shop. "This is too much," he muttered to himself. He had never expected anything like this for helping Morris. Even a thank you would have been enough for him. But this money Morris had sent was what Mark needed most right now. He thought for a while, holding the envelope in his hand. He had to accept the money, but at the same time he wondered how he could do justice to it. "Maybe I'll use some of it to get my affairs in order and spend the rest to help more people," he thought. That day marked a small but significant turning point for Mark. The pessimism he had carried for so long gave way to hope and gratitude. As he opened his small shop, he was more sincere in his conversations with customers, even offering coffee to the first customer who came in. "Coffee is on us today," he said with a smile. In that moment he realized that kindness was contagious. A week later, Mark was at work when he heard the door open. It was Morris who came in. The old man looked a little more rested. His face had a little more color. He smiled and walked over to Mark. "Hello, son," he said. "I just wanted to say thank you one more time. If you hadn't been there that day, maybe I'd still be on that roadside." Mark shook his hand with a smile. "Oh, come on, Morris. Anyone would have done the same." "No, not everyone would," Morris replied. "You could have just driven by or even noticed me and decided not to stop. But you didn't. You stopped. That reminded me there's still kindness in the world. And it made me think it's not just me who needed you. There are others too." Mark felt something stir inside him. "Others? What do you mean?" Morris pulled out a chair and sat down. "This town is full of people like me, folks who need help but might not even realize it. Someone like you could inspire them. Maybe it's something small, a kind word, a warm meal. Who knows? But someone like you can start a chain reaction." Morris's words stuck with Mark. He'd always been a man who had to fight for everything in life. But this felt different, like some kind of awakening. He realized you don't have to do something big to make a difference. Small acts of kindness could ripple out and touch so many lives. From that day on, Mark made it a point to focus not just on his business but also on helping the people in his town. His first step was hiring a repairman to fix the leaking roof of an elderly customer. He used part of the money Morris had left him for this. Then he started a community fundraiser with his neighbors to help a widowed woman in need. These small gestures began to strengthen the bond between the townsfolk. Mark's shop soon became more than just a place to buy things. It turned into a spot where people could gather, share stories, and support each other. Over time, Mark's business also started to recover. More customers came by, drawn to his honesty and generosity. A year later, Morris returned to the town. This time, he decided to move into a house near Mark's shop. "I just wanted to thank you again, Mark," Morris said. "You've made such an impact not just on me but on this whole town. People like you make the world a better place." Mark smiled and replied, "Sometimes a little kindness can improve your own life too. If it weren't for you, I might not have realized that." Thank you so much for listening to this story. What did it remind you of? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's connect there.